certainly my pleasure to be here today, and thank you again for your time. I very much appreciate it. Inspiring, I hope so, but hopefully a dose of realism as well. I think one of the things that we need to think about when we're talking about the SX path. Now, the SX path is the sustainability transformation path, right? It is about being the change maker in our organizations, but it's also about that balance between, the challenges and the business value that we're going to do, as well as delivering sustainable value. Now, today I'll be going through a number of key points. The first is looking at some of the trends with regards to sustainability transformation. Going through some additional policies, etc., that Alfie alluded to earlier. I mean, he mentioned 3. I'll go through a few more and look at some of the trends that are happening with regards to that, to just let you know that the sustainability regulation bus is coming, and we're all trying not to be hit by it. All right. We'll talk about some of the role of AI in advancing sustainability and ESG initiatives, and the challenges and opportunities that we have in addressing those. Now, one thing I do want to just pause here and talk about is the ESG, right? So ESG is talking about the environment, it's talking about social, and it's talking about governance, and they're all very important in their own right. Today, we'll be focusing on environmental sustainability. So when I'm talking about sustainability, that will be the primary focus on that. However, that's not to say that the other areas are not important. It's certainly something that we'll be bringing up in the panel later, I believe. Now, before we dive into some of the trends, I'd like to highlight a prediction that IDC has made. Now, IDC makes predictions every year. Actually, we make hundreds of predictions every year. And what we try and do is get an idea of what is going to happen in the future, how technology is going to influence that, and what is going to be the business outcome or the business need or the business driver as a result of that technology. Now, here we talk about IDC predicting that by 2024, 35% of Asia-Pacific, excluding Japan, organizations will advance their ESG metrics and data management beyond reporting capabilities, using AI to generate sustainability-driven cost benefits and competitive advantages. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, you all kind of said that sustainability hasn't hit you very much yet, right? A lot of this has been at the higher corporate levels. However, there are a group of people that are probably involved quite heavily with sustainability, and where a lot of actions for organisations are in the recording of data to do with sustainability, reporting for sustainability, right? Putting reports together, and then trying to respond to the actions or the call to action for sustainability. Unfortunately, where many organisations are, and where they probably need your help the most, is around that recording and reporting aspect to start with, right? Because a lot of that is done manually. There are a lot of Excel files and Word documents that are flying around that are forming the backbone of a lot of these activities. Now, coupled to this is the need to respond, which is looking at optimizing, improving activities, as well as building solutions that are going to allow for more sustainable operations. At the moment, largely those are being done manually as well, right? And we'll talk about proportions of organisations that are addressing that shortly. But where the opportunity is, especially for IT professionals, is to be part of the solution here and start to look at being able to ease the load, the administrative load, the optimization load, and being able to further sustainability goals much faster and much more easily than they can do manually. Now as Alfie alluded to before, he said that sustainability is a C-suite priority, and in some cases it's largely stayed up there and is starting to trickle down as we are starting to see the impact of various regulations. We did a survey of CEOs worldwide earlier this year, and we found that globally 44% of CEOs are worried about sustainability. In the Asia-Pac region, that drops to about 30%. But in Singapore, and largely because of the progress of laws here and the relationships that we have with other countries in the region and with other countries globally, this is starting to become something that's occupying the mind of senior leaders. Now, why is this the case? Now, this is being driven by a number of different aspects. Organisations are starting to see that it is important for it to become a foundational aspect of corporate purposes. Now, when we talk about it becoming a foundational aspect of corporate purposes, this is coming in it from two things. It's coming from top line and bottom line. So when we talk about bottom line, a lot of organisations are starting to recognise that some of the initial journeys that we make with regards to sustainability often result in cost efficiencies and savings and waste reduction. This is allowing them to actually put in very easy tactical activities that see some basic results. But it also allows them to create foundational capabilities in recording and reporting on their activities that then allow them to start to attract better customers, better employees, better being able to start to adhere to more laws. And so they're starting to see the benefits of this, and it's going from foundational capabilities to foundational to the business. We're also seeing that organisations are largely being mandated to act on these regulations. Right? That is a big driver in the region, and that mandate is not just coming from local regulation. Anytime that you want to do business with Europe at the moment, for example, you are required to be compliant with their reporting regulations when it comes to Scope 3 emissions, which impacts the supply chain. And every organisation is part of a supply chain, right? Now, when we're mandated to act by regulations, that means that we're starting to see that we may not be eligible for business, right? And if we are not eligible for business, revenue dries up, income dries up, budgets dry up. We can't play with all the IT tools that we'd like to play with. But more importantly, you know, we can't attract business. And so this is starting to become a top-line impact there. The other is looking at having that, you know, as a direct result of the mandated by regulators and not being eligible for certain RFQs, that then has direct impact on profitability, right? And the viability of our business overall. And then organisations are seeing this as a key action to mitigate risk, so that we are able to maintain our eligibility for business, being able to answer the calls of the next group of people. As it says here, we have suppliers that demand it, we have partners that demand it, we have investors that demand it, and we have a workforce that demands it, right? And in order to continue our viability in business, we need all of these groups in order to maintain our businesses. So if we're going to stay in business, a sustainability strategy is starting to become part of that. Now, when I was talking earlier about the need to maintain sustainability as a foundation to the business and then looking at reacting to regulatory challenges, you can see here that across the region, 16 countries, right, have put in, you know, we've highlighted 16 countries that have sustainability regulations. Now, we do have pace setters here, and you have countries like Singapore, New Zealand, South Korea, who are actually leading the pace in terms of regulation that is being set for the region. We have other countries that are seen as being, you know, emerging leaders or watchers that are seeing what is happening and are choosing to keep up. But what this is showing is that in this case, the organisations are, the countries are actually looking to take action. Right, so even though you do have leaders that are obviously setting the pace and are the ones that are making change happen in the region, there is a trend of wait and see, watch, and what are we going to do? And we are expecting that this to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, where a lot of these watchers will start to become active law setters in the region. Now, what we're finding is that countries are doing this in two ways. They're either setting incentives. So we're seeing a lot of incentives come out to inspire innovation, make sure, you know, take advantage of the new technologies that are being out there and investing in ESG technology so that that investment continues and the field can be developed further. And then you also have the penalty side of things. So if you don't comply, you know, you are forced to explain why you're not doing so, or in some case be financially penalised. And this is something that is certainly on the increase. Now in Singapore, I said I'd go beyond the 3 laws that were highlighted earlier, and there are a number of different laws, and here we have them in force. They're either being drafted or proposed, or they're being put through phased enforcement or are being expanded on. Now these go into a few different categories. I think you'll get a copy of the slides, so I'm not going to go through all of them in vast detail. We don't have that much time. But what I will do is I will talk to some of the broad categories that they cover. And the first one is around emissions and the energy transition. Singapore is setting strong direction for organisations to go through carbon emission or general emission reduction and focus on transitioning to renewable energy sources. I mean, my husband is a bit of a rev head. He loves his cars, and he's really upset that he'll have to say goodbye to all his internal combustion engines by 2040, for example. All right. So that's one example of which is a knock-on effect to the Singapore Green Plan and some of the other policies that are coming in that are actually asking for active reduction in emissions and making sure that we do transition to renewable energies. Now, there is often a lot of debate about the effectiveness of doing so because, hey, aren't we all running off coal power anyway? Well, in Singapore, no. But even in the region has actually transitioned as of 2022. We're running at 40% renewable energy sources, right, in Asia-Pac. The UK is going to 100 shortly. You know, we're really starting to see some movement against this. So looking to move to, you know, electrification and alternate sources is actually a very viable alternative. As much as we like to give airtime to the naysayers, it is a transition that is happening. The other one is looking at, another area of focus is looking at ESG reporting and its close association with financial reporting. This is a trend that we're starting to see across the region and is certainly increasing, where organisations are mandated to report. Now, at the moment, it's largely limited to listed companies, but that's expanding in various jurisdictions across the region, where large organisations are actually starting to have to be required to report on what they're doing from an ESG perspective. The other area is in waste reduction and resource utilisation, making sure that we're actually using our resources effectively and reducing the amount of waste. And there are a certain number of key areas that Singapore focuses on. Food waste is one example of those. Being able to reduce the amount of waste, make sure that we have efficient resource usage, and be that water usage, food usage, etc., is often seen as also a national security stance for Singapore as well. All right. And another area of policy or framework definition is alignment. Singapore is aligning with regional and international language when it comes to how we talk about sustainability. And this is something that's been requested of for a while. Having standardization in this actually means that we're looking at being part of the global community and starting to interact and direct the rest of the global community as to what standards we will comply to, how we will be involved in those standards, and being able to actually have that standard transitioned across national borders, which is a key thing, especially when it comes to multinational corporations or doing business globally, right? So having that taxonomy alignment, those framework alignments is really key as part of that. And Singapore is certainly very progressive in how they address that. So there's certainly a strong policy push for adoption. Now these are starting, some are started this year, some are starting future years. You know, we're going to see a carbon tax, for example, being implemented in order to help with the emissions framework reduction, and we expect to see those carbon taxes increase, and that's going to force certain actions, and it's going to have an effect from IT all the way down to operations. But it's not just Singapore laws that are going to impact. We also have impact from overseas laws. Last year, IDC did a survey, and across all organisations in the supply chain, right, from retail to mining, from services, all the way through to manufacturing, we found that on average, 90% of organisations in ASEAN have some significant involvement with Europe. Now, Europe has very strong sustainability laws, and I've been talking to a number of peers in the industry, and many European countries and many European companies are having trouble themselves with complying with these laws. But these laws are rolling ahead, and we are going to see greater enforcement and greater pressure to actually adhere to this in order to do business overseas. Right? Now, Singapore is relatively small. We must do business overseas. Yeah. So keeping up with all these laws is actually going to be just as important as keeping up with the ones that are here locally. Now, you'll notice that the heading here may not seem to match the chart, all right? Sustainability transition in ASEAN is gaining momentum, and it is. Now, unfortunately, it looks like most are in the early stages of sustainability maturity, and that's true, right? 67% of organisations, and this is ASEAN, are actually in the early stages. However, it was larger, and most were in the I'm not doing sustainability bucket, right? This little X on the left, right? What we are seeing is organisations are starting to get on that journey. And as was pointed out earlier, it's 100% true that a lot of those journeys are still at the top, with many in the adopters or the manual phase. And they're trying to, they have separate sustainability officers that are doing their own bit, that are trying to influence other parts of the organisation without necessarily having it fully integrated throughout the whole company and being part of everybody's mandate, all right? But the good news is that we have more on that journey, right? We are seeing more organisations jump on board with the sustainability journey. Now, in order to do so, they are finding that they have to have sufficient financial resources. That is one ask. But the advantage of that is that being on the sustainability journey often loosens up some money for these sort of changes. And we are seeing some rather innovative models come up that are allowing for these sort of financial budgets. When we're looking at sustainability, the first thing that organisations often do is go on efficiency drives, right? Looking at reducing energy usage in a number of different areas. And that allows organisations to take advantage of that. Now, I want to do a quick body poll because I see a few heads nodding here. Have you ever seen a body poll? Do you know what a body poll is, right? So a body poll is where I'm going to actually get you to do something. So first I want the whole room to stand up. Come on, everybody up. It's after lunch. It's the hardest one to do, right? All right, so in terms of where your organisation is in this journey, right? Are they a starter, right? Just starting out, trying to explore. Maybe you've heard about the CEO talking about it, but you've not seen anything. All right, I want your hand down here, right? Put your hand down like this, right? For those that can't see at the back, just put your hands down this. When I say, okay? If you're manual, you have a bit up like this. If you're an adopter, if you're a deployer, and if you're a pioneer and your company lives and breathes sustainability, it's everything you're about, then I want your hand up like here, stand up proud. All right, you ready? Everybody understand? All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Got some down here, some right down, okay? Some here. So we've got a few. Some here. All right, great, good job. Thank you very much. Look around, you saw where everybody was? All right, everybody take a seat. Okay, so it is a good idea to see where your peers are, right? And it's not necessarily about becoming one of these straight away. You can look, you're here, and you can see that the guy next to you is here. Maybe it's worth having a conversation to see where they're going, right? Maybe she's got a secret to tell you that how to get from here to here, right? But the thing about this is to understand, a lot were here, but we're starting to see more shift up here and here. And it is gaining momentum in the region. And a lot of it is because we do have situations like the legislation that was coming before. Now, what is required? You're going to have, as I said, to have the financial resources. You're going to have a strategy, and that will start coming out of your C-suite. But often it is done in consultation with key people that are interested in it. There is a certain degree of accountability and governance, and that's where a lot of IT comes in, right? Being able to help with putting the data structure together that's going to allow that to happen. Bringing out high-quality sustainability metrics, so when we look at recording and reporting, being able to pull out data that's actually going to allow us to be accountable and to measure where we are in that journey. And also being able to identify the operational practices. Now, when we look at our processes in an organisation, we have the opportunity to redefine some of those. So you need to be able to identify where can you improve your process for sustainable outcomes. And I had a bit of a sneak peek at the experience thing over there, and there's a really good demonstration out there that I encourage you to have a look at. Now, in keeping in line where these momentum for sustainability is increasing, as I said before, there's a lot of internal factors, there's a lot of external factors. The external comes largely from law, and we're seeing these policies and regulations. The other area that it's coming for and IDC is seeing actually a lot of evidence that is starting to show that financial institutions are becoming just as important in pushing sustainability as legal institutions or legal frameworks or regulatory institutions. And the reason is we're seeing examples where financial organizations are actually putting sustainability and ESG criteria in as part of the ability to access capital, right? I was talking to an F&B organization based out of Singapore. They also had branches in Thailand and Australia. They were told by their financier that if they didn't have, I think it was 26.5% women in management by 2027, and they didn't have a sustainability officer at the C-suite or the board level, then their loan rates were going to go up 10 basis points and they were going to lose access to capital. All right, so that starts to get the attention of the CFO when we start to see these sort of things happening. So regulations is one area of pressure. The other area of pressure is starting to happen is the financial side. We're also starting to see this being requested by customers. As I said, involvement in Europe. We're also starting to see things being stopped at customs in the US. They're not allowed in because you can't track origin. You don't have the relevant certificates of origin or not able to show traceability for components of origin, right? Origin of components, sorry. And we're also starting to see things like being able to maintain margins. Like there are some organisations, I was speaking to a pharmaceutical company who was actually saying that they've taken a sustainability line because it allows them to protect their profit margin. They're actually able to charge a higher price because they are sustainable, which takes off some of the cost pressure, all right? So there are a number of different reasons why organisations are engaging in sustainability, and it's certainly something that we expect to see, again, increase rather than decrease. However, sustainability transition has been slow, right? And even at IDC, we saw last year, and probably the early part of this year, that the interest in sustainability was taking a backseat to profitability. Yeah, and this, I'm sure you've all experienced it. Who's experienced that, right? More interested in getting costs down than getting sustainability metrics up, yeah? And this is not uncommon. Why we are seeing this because there are, this people, process and technology, often that's seen as a formula for the way forward, but sometimes some aspects of this hold us back. And when we look at people, we are seeing mindsets that are not necessarily as adaptable when it comes to embracing sustainable outcomes. We do see some that are challenged by the idea that this could be a way forward. We are experiencing leaders that do not see the potential or the opportunity in sustainability. And where there is the opportunity to save money, to drive a competitive advantage, to differentiate, right? And these mindsets are certainly some barriers that we do experience. And often this is also due to lack of expertise. So we don't have the capabilities inside the organisation to be able to change minds or also be able to put in solutions that are going to move the needle. Under the process side, we have inadequate processes. We don't have enough data. We don't have the ability to mine our processes and work out where the inefficiencies are, where the carbon emissions are occurring. This, we could always use IT's help, right? And with that, we can go further and look at the opportunities for optimization with advanced algorithms, AI, etc. In order to do that, though, we need to know what we're measuring, the KPIs, and understanding, and that needs to come from the people side of things, but having the data for the KPIs, being able to put in a strategy in place to collect that data, and then being able to finance those things. So these are things that are holding us back, right? And then there's the technology side of things. We're doing, if you go back to the previous slide, we're talking about a lot of things still being in manual mode, right? Still a lot of manual processes being happen. And this is a great opportunity for technology. Personally, I look at, and I'd love to find a way to say Gen AI without saying Gen AI. But I look at Gen AI, Gen AI has, if you're going to be really rough, two big skills. The ability to ingest data and the ability to create content, right? And if we look at, there's a beautiful solution opportunity there where we can actually ingest a whole lot of data and potentially create sustainability reports that take away the reporting aspect for a lot of our people and being able to turn that into, let's do something about sustainability, right? So huge opportunity for technology here. Now, one of the other issues that we often have with technology is we don't have enough good case studies and examples to follow. And again, go have a look at that Experience Centre, because there are some great case studies out there that will allow you to see what other people have done and being able to action it. So digital transformation, DX, accelerates sustainability transformation, right? There is the opportunity for technology to lead here. When we look at how technology leads, right, we see opportunities for bringing the data together. You know, once we know what to measure and how to measure and where we're going to bring it in, how are we going to do that efficiently, effectively? Consolidate that data, turn it into reports, right? 46% of organizations have found that to be a benefit of putting technology into support sustainability initiatives. Similarly, 46% have said they've had a better ability to actually measure their performance, look at what is happening in their organization, and then start to react to that, right? And take action. So instead of spending 75% of our time on collecting data and reporting, we can now start to spend 75% on our time actually moving the needle on ESG, right? The other thing, which is often, as I said before, is something that gets the attention of the C-suite, is this ability to mitigate risks. And 43% of organizations did say that they had this ability to mitigate risk. And we are seeing sustainability-related risk increase. This morning on Channel News Asia, right, I was watching Channel News Asia, and they were referring to a directive that had come out, or a recommendation that had come out from the government, that all organizations that operate in external climates, right, so outside, are required or should be putting together climate mitigation strategies to be able to measure and take action when there are things like heat exhaustion affecting personnel. Lightning strikes are on the increase, right? So this affects things like oil and gas. It affects any construction sites. It affects the SMRT workers from last week, all right? But, you know, we're starting to see the actual impact of this, and now we've got systems in place, and I think this is the first time, and I mean, I've been talking about sustainability for 25 years. This is the first time where we've actually had the opportunity and the technologies that allow us to effectively look at sustainability, identify where problems are, and do something about it, right? And I think that is because we're starting to get that, and as it says here, better visibility and transparency. All right? We're actually able to see where the things are happening and what to do about it. So, where are organizations focusing? Funnily enough, and I largely believe this is because of the European directive that's coming out, or that has come out, is that we are seeing a huge emphasis on Scope 3, right? When we're looking at Scope 3, that means all the emissions that are happening outside your organization except for energy, right? So any electricity that you buy or anything like that, that's not in count. That's Scope 2. Scope 3 is anything from the companies that you sell to, anything from the companies that you buy from, right? Now, the European reporting directive is actually saying that you need to be aware of Scope 3 from your organization, and that's where we're starting to see a lot of European companies ask their Asian customers or ask their Asian suppliers, what are you doing about ESG, right? And so we are starting to see increased emphasis on this, because it doesn't just stop with you, you're expected to report on what your supply chain is doing, right? And these sort of laws and this sort of emphasis is accelerating. We're also expected to see a lot more in the energy management and efficiency area. In Singapore, it's driven by strong regulation in this place, but it also just makes sense. You turn off a light, you save the money, right? So if we extrapolate this into our servers, into cloud, into other capabilities that we have from an IT perspective, or even, you know, being able from a facilities management perspective, or from a operations factory warehousing perspective, right? The more that we're able to save here, the more money we save, right? Bottom line, easy. IT infrastructure efficiency, similar thing. Being able to operate more effectively saves us energy, right? and takes us away. I think what the World Economic Forum estimates that IT as an industry contributes to 1 to 4% of emissions, right? I think that was the most recent estimate, right? So obviously this has become an area of focus. But if we operate efficiently, we also have the potential to solve 20 to 40% of the world's problems, all right? And I think this is a great opportunity that as an industry we certainly can grab. And then looking at our scope 1 and 2, so what's happening inside our organization? Where are we emitting? Do we have waste? Where do we have poor resource optimization? Where is the opportunity for us to improve our efforts? So in terms of where we're seeing the emphasis in ASEAN, this is the current trend. Now coming to AI, as I said before, I think there's a whole lot of opportunities around AI. And in ASEAN, 53% of ASEAN organizations use AI or Gen AI, and it skews more towards AI, to help transform to sustainable production and business operations. Now, when we're looking at this, this is two-sided. As I alluded to before, the World Economic Forum estimates that IT uses emissions and produces emissions, I should say, right? We need to, when we are looking at AI, think about how are we responsible with our AI? And this does adhere to ESG standards. The first one is the environmental aspect, which I've talked about. The second one is the social aspect. Are the models biased? Are there concerns about the way that the data is being processed? Is it just decision compelling in one way or another, right? These are things that we need to unpack and make sure that we understand with the vendors that we're buying from. And then the governance side of things. What data is being used? Where is that data being used? Are we protecting the rights of individuals, corporates, etc., when we're using this data? We have to think about all of this in the scope of responsible AI use. The other thing is AI enabling ESG outcomes? And there is tremendous, we haven't even started to tap this, right? A lot of our efforts so far have looked at optimization, but the innovation the potential for innovation in this space. What new business models can we come up with? How can we improve carbon capture, et cetera, right? When we're looking at AI that leads to solutions that are going to help with carbon or greenhouse gas reduction, when we're looking at solutions that are going to allow us to improve how we use resources, there is so much potential in this space that we could potentially be the heroes in this story. Yeah. Now, at the moment, though, this is where we're seeing most of the use cases, right? And I'll just focus on the three. Like I said, you'll probably get a copy of these slides. But when we're looking at IT efficiency optimization, I think there should be no surprises here that this is number one, right? You all are used to measuring your servers, the data that comes from your servers, the cloud use, right? There's cloud providers put out calculators that tell you how much energy you're using. There's a lot of help in this space. So this is often for IT a very key focus of where AI or Gen AI is leveraged in these initiatives. The next is in ESG data analysis, and that's because ESG data is varied and complex, right? If we take the step back from just sustainability and then start to include the social and the governance side of things, where we're measuring data, what data is being measured, how many women do we have in management so that we can comply with the financial requirement of one organisation versus how many carbon emissions is that truck in Australia or Singapore emitting. There is so much variety in the type of data that we're pulling together for all the reports that we have to make to show that we're making progress on our targets, right? So this is obviously a very popular area for organisations to focus on. And then looking at sustainable or responsible production and operations. Again, optimization is usually the first step here, looking at how can we optimize what we put in our factories, what we put in our call centres, what we put in our offices, and being able to operate more sustainably. But then we can go on to new steps, where we start to come up with new processes, new ways of doing things. Are we going to look at completely rewriting our operations, right? Or completely reconfiguring them in order to come up with new processes, right? These are areas where organisations are looking at AI to be able to do that. And they're doing that through digital twin technologies. They're doing that through being able to do process mining. right? These are all examples of how organizations are starting to look at these capabilities. Now, I have only 3 minutes left, so luckily I've only got 2 slides, so we're all good here. The value of sustainability, as should be no surprise, improve operational efficiency and costs. That's where half of the ASEAN representatives said that they found the most value. But these values, which are on the left-hand side, translate basically into 3 main drivers, right? The first is risk mitigation, and that's through reducing costs, being able to ensure I'm going to maintain my operations, stay in business, right? Whether I'm able to, look at improving my brand reputation, whether I'm able to make sure I have, fewer costs, or I'm able to, get rid of any risks associated with, worker safety, right? These are all examples of risk mitigation. Then I have differentiation. How do I differentiate myself from my competition? Now, initially, this could be through regulation. I'm able to comply with those regulations. My competitors can't, all right? And I'm able to prove it. I'm able to offer an eco-friendly brand that's going to help you reduce your Scope 3 emissions that my competitors can't do, all right? These are examples of ways organizations can differentiate. And then looking at the value driver. Can I charge more because I'm sustainable? Can I start to look at improving my brand to be better than my competition because I'm sustainable? Think Patagonia, right? Classic example. These are ways that organizations are not just looking at the bottom line of sustainability, but also the top line. So, what should you guys do? I know you've heard this before, but it is a now opportunity, and it's not a now opportunity, it's a now requirement, right? If you're not doing it, or your organization is not doing it, they're going to be asked to do it within the next 12 months. And it's something that, if they're doing it and you haven't heard about it, they're probably doing it manually. How can you help? Yeah? With that in mind, leverage technology to accelerate the sustainable business outcomes. Where are technologies like AI, IoT, blockchain able to replace the humble spreadsheet? Right? Oh, I love Excel. Not. All right. Said no one ever. And get this into a point of automation where we can actually focus on moving the needle on sustainable outcomes, right? Build partnerships. Now, partnerships are not just with your suppliers, they're also with your technology vendors. Leverage the knowledge that is available for you. Go and explore things like the experience exhibition that's out there, and get ideas, right? And learn who can actually help support you with things and address gaps in your knowledge that you might have, right? And then look at maximizing your ROI through your vendor use cases. Now, it's no accident that driving cost efficiencies and reducing costs is the top value. Because if you're able to have production or productivity or operational use cases that also can be solved by sustainability software, then you're getting double ROI. You're going to have ROI across multiple use cases, right, using one tool. And that's something to really look out for when you're looking for solution vendors. All right. So there is a need to urgently prioritize this. I hope I've given you some insights, some starting actions, and hopefully a little bit of inspiration. My name is Stephanie Krishna from IDC. Thank you very much.